On her wedding night, her billionaire CEO husband made her sleep in the guest room. Months later, she returned as the new owner of his company. The boardroom went silent. Dr. Harry Ashford stood frozen in the doorway, his confident stride faltering mid-step. At the head of the polished mahogany table, in the chair that had been his father's, then his, sat a woman he barely recognized. Olivia Shaw, his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife. Her hands were folded calmly over a stack of documents, her expression serene, almost pleasant. "Good morning, Harry." She said it the way you'd greet a stranger at a coffee shop. Casual, detached, terrifying in its simplicity. "What is this?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "What are you doing here?" She tilted her head slightly, as if the question confused her. "I'm chairing this meeting. As the majority shareholder of Shaw Healthcare Collective, formerly known as Ashford Medical Group, it's my responsibility. Didn't you receive the memo?" The blood drained from Harry's face. "Majority shareholder? That's impossible." Olivia opened the folder in front of her with deliberate slowness. "Is it? Let's see. Through a series of strategic investments made over the past 6 months, my coalition now controls 51% of this company's shares. Your mother and father retain 30%. You, Harry, hold 19%. Which means," she looked up, her eyes meeting his with a clarity that cut like a scalpel, "you work for me now. So I'll ask again. Please, take a seat. We have a lot to discuss about your future here." His mother, Lauren Ashford, shot to her feet at the far end of the table, her face twisted in fury. "This is absurd. You can't just walk in here and—" "Actually, Mrs. Ashford," Olivia interrupted, her voice never rising above conversational level, "I can, and I did. Now, shall we begin? Or would you prefer to continue making a scene in front of the board members, who are very eager to hear my vision for this company's future? Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? Have you ever loved someone with everything you had, only to realize they saw you as nothing more than an accessory to their success? Have you ever been humiliated, dismissed, erased, until you almost forgot you were a whole person who existed before them? This is the story of a woman who was exiled to a guest room on what should have been the beginning of her marriage. A woman who worked 3 jobs to build a man's empire, only to be told she was an embarrassment. A woman who was so underestimated, so completely dismissed, that nobody saw her coming until she owned everything. But how did a nurse with almost nothing become the CEO of a billion-dollar medical empire? How did a woman who signed a prenuptial agreement that left her with nothing walk away with everything? And more importantly, how did she transform humiliation into the kind of power that makes grown men tremble? I'm Mr. Hartline, and if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told to know your place, if you've ever wondered whether leaving would mean losing everything, you need to hear Olivia Shaw's story. Because sometimes the guest room isn't a punishment, it's a chrysalis, and what emerges is more powerful than anyone imagined. But before we get to that boardroom, before we get to the moment Harry Ashford realized he'd destroyed the only person who ever truly loved him, we need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to when Olivia Shaw was just a nursing student with big dreams and an even bigger heart. Back to when she met a struggling medical resident named Harry Ashford and made the choice that would define the next decade of her life. If you've ever felt underestimated, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button, not for me, but for every person who's been made to feel small by someone who should have cherished them. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from, or just say, "I'm with you, Mr. Hartline." Your engagement helps stories like this reach people who desperately need to hear them. Now, let's begin. Part 1. The Foundation of Sacrifice. The hospital cafeteria at 3 in the morning smelled like burnt coffee and industrial disinfectant. Olivia Shaw sat at a corner table, still in her scrubs from the ICU, her 3rd cup of terrible coffee going cold between her hands. Her shift had ended an hour ago, but she couldn't go home yet. In 30 minutes, she needed to log into her laptop and start her 2nd job, medical transcription for a company that paid by the file. After that, if she had any energy left, she'd try to sleep for 3 hours before her weekend clinic shift started. This was year 4. 4 years of Olivia working 70 to 80 hours a week so that Harry Ashford could complete his neurosurgery fellowship. 4 years of her emptying her bank account, her energy, and slowly, invisibly, her sense of self. You're going to die at this pace. Her colleague, Marcus Chen, slid into the seat across from her. He was one of the few doctors who still treated nurses like human beings, who remembered their names, who noticed when they were struggling. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours, Olivia? I sleep. Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. When? Between your 3 jobs? Marcus leaned forward, genuine concern etched into his features. Harry's presentation is next week, right? The one for the fellowship completion? Olivia nodded. She'd spent the last 6 weeks formatting his research, editing his slides, practicing his speech with him while he barely acknowledged her presence. She knew every word of his presentation better than he did. She'd caught errors he'd missed, strengthened arguments he'd overlooked, made his good work excellent. And after he completes the fellowship, after he gets the position he's interviewing for, when do you get your turn, Olivia? The question settled like a stone in her chest. When did she get her turn? She'd wanted to be a photographer once, had dreams of traveling, capturing moments, telling stories through images that made people feel something. Her camera sat in a closet in their tiny apartment now, untouched for so long the battery had corroded. She'd sold the good lenses 2 years ago when Harry's grant money ran out. Sold them to a pawn shop for a fraction of their value so he could afford the registration fee for a medical conference. Soon, she whispered it like a prayer. After this, everything changes. Marcus didn't argue. He'd heard this before. Watched this woman sacrifice pieces of herself. Watched her shrink and fade, always believing that her turn was coming. He wanted to tell her the truth, that people who demanded everything rarely started giving anything back. But Olivia's eyes held a hope he couldn't bring himself to crush. Just take care of yourself too, okay? You matter, Olivia. Not just as Harry's support system. You, as a person, you matter. After he left, Olivia sat in the fluorescent silence and wondered when she'd started measuring her worth by how useful she was to someone else. The apartment she shared with Harry sat on the edge of a neighborhood where sirens were as common as birdsong. She'd found it 3 years ago when his parents, old money with older values, had cut him off for choosing a surgical fellowship over joining his father's private practice empire. The Ashford family didn't understand ambition that didn't directly serve their interests. Harry wanted to be the best neurosurgeon in the country, not just another doctor in the family business. Olivia had admired that once, his determination, his refusal to take the easy path. She hadn't realized she would become the path he walked on. The apartment door creaked open to semi-darkness. Harry sat at their second-hand desk, the one Olivia had found on the curb, and cleaned for 3 hours until it was usable. He was surrounded by papers, his face illuminated by the laptop screen she'd bought with her tax return 2 years ago. Hey, she set down her bag quietly, careful not to disturb his concentration. Did you eat? He didn't turn around. Did you confirm the dry cleaning pickup? I need my suit for the presentation. Olivia's stomach dropped. She'd forgotten. Between the ICU shift, the transcription deadline, and the weekend clinic schedule, she'd completely forgotten to arrange his dry cleaning pickup. I'm sorry. I'll call them right now. I needed it done yesterday, Olivia. His voice carried that edge, the one that appeared whenever stress pressed down on his shoulders. This presentation could define my entire career. Do you understand that? Everything I've worked for comes down to next week, and I can't even trust you to handle one simple task. The words hit like a physical blow. One simple task, as if she didn't handle everything, as if she wasn't the reason he'd survived the past 4 years. I'll go pick it up right now. The place is open until 11. I'll drive over and forget it. He finally turned to look at her, and she saw the exhaustion carved into his features, the stress that made him cruel. Just forget it. I'll handle it myself, like I handle everything important. Olivia stood there, her feet aching in shoes held together with superglue, her body screaming for sleep, her heart cracking at the casual dismissal. You don't handle everything, Harry. I work 3 jobs so you can focus on your fellowship. I pay our rent. I buy our food. I make sure you have everything you need to succeed, and I'm grateful." His tone suggested he was anything but. But gratitude doesn't dry clean a suit, does it? She could have fought, could have listed every sacrifice, every sold possession, every dream deferred. Instead, she crossed the small space between them, her fingers finding the knots of tension in his shoulders. He was rigid at first, defensive, but slowly relaxed under her touch. "You're going to be extraordinary next week." Her voice was soft, soothing, the voice of someone who'd forgotten how to advocate for herself. "You're the most brilliant surgeon I've ever known. This presentation is just a formality. They already know you're exceptional." Harry's hand came up, covering hers. For a moment, he was the man she'd fallen in love with, the struggling resident who'd held her during her father's funeral, the one who danced with her in this tiny kitchen to music from his phone, the one who'd promised her that once he made it, once he was established, he'd spend the rest of his life making her dreams come true too. "What would I do without you?" He asked it quietly, and Olivia heard genuine need in his voice. "You'll never have to find out." She meant it with every fiber of her being. Years later, looking back, Olivia would remember this moment, would remember meaning those words, would remember believing that love meant sacrifice, that partnership meant one person pouring themselves out so the other could be filled. She would remember, and she would grieve for the woman who didn't yet know that love without reciprocity is just slow suicide. The presentation went perfectly. Harry captivated the Fellowship Review Board with research Olivia had helped compile, slides she'd perfected, words they'd practiced together in their kitchen at midnight. The board offered him a position as attending neurosurgeon at Metropolitan General Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical centers in the country. The salary was more than Olivia had earned in the past 4 years combined. They celebrated with champagne Olivia bought with her last $50. Harry lifted his glass, his eyes bright with triumph and relief. "We did it." He pulled her close, and for the first time in months, he really looked at her. "We actually did it, Olivia. You did it." She deflected automatically, used to minimizing her contributions. "No." He shook his head, and she wanted desperately to believe the sincerity in his voice. I couldn't have survived without you. You're my foundation, my rock, everything I am. It's because you held me up when I couldn't stand on my own." Olivia held those words like precious stones, turned them over in her mind, believed them. She'd been so hungry for acknowledgement, for recognition that she mattered, that she didn't notice what he didn't say. He didn't say he'd hold her up now, didn't say it was her turn, didn't say he'd spend the next 4 years working 3 jobs so she could chase photography. He said she was his foundation, and foundations, she would learn, are meant to be stood on. Invisible, underground, bearing weight. The months that followed felt like watching a time-lapse of a flower, blooming, except she was the soil being depleted while he flourished. Harry started his position at Metropolitan General. The salary made their years of poverty feel obscene in retrospect. They moved from the tiny apartment to a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made Olivia dizzy. They bought a car with seats that heated, filled closets with clothes that actually fit. Olivia quit the ICU job first, then the transcription work. She kept one small position at a community clinic 3 days a week because she loved the patients, loved feeling like she still had purpose beyond being Harry Ashford's girlfriend. Then came the conversation about marriage. "My father's condition for restoring my trust fund is that I settle down." Harry said it over dinner in their new penthouse, as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "He thinks marriage will make me more stable, more committed to building the family legacy." Olivia looked up from her plate. "The family legacy he cut you off for not following?" Harry had the grace to look uncomfortable. "He's willing to compromise. I stay at Metropolitan General, build my career, and eventually transition into a partnership with Ashford Medical Group, his healthcare company. But he wants me married first, wants to know I'm," in his words, "anchored." Anchored. The word felt heavy. Olivia set down her fork. "And what do you want, Harry?" "I want to marry you." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I know this isn't the most romantic proposal. I know I should have a ring, should do this properly. But I love you, Olivia. You've been with me through everything. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" She should have noticed what was missing. The romance, yes, but more than that. He hadn't asked what she wanted. Hadn't asked about her dreams, her career, her life. The proposal wasn't about building a future together. It was about him needing to be anchored so he could access his trust fund and please his father. But Olivia, exhausted from 4 years of sacrifice and desperate to believe it had meant something, said yes. The lawyer came before the ring. Harry's father, Robert Ashford, insisted on a prenuptial agreement. His attorney, a man named Whitmore with cold eyes and colder manners, spread papers across their dining table like he was dealing cards. This is standard for families of means. Whitmore's tone suggested Olivia should be grateful he was even explaining this to her. Mr. Ashford's trust fund, his future inheritance, and any assets acquired during the marriage through family money remained separate property. In the event of divorce, Mrs. Shaw would receive no claim to these assets. Olivia read through the dense legal language, her nursing degree useless, in deciphering terms like separate property and commingling of assets. She looked at Harry. "Do I need my own lawyer to review this? It's just a formality." Harry said it quickly, almost dismissively. "My father requires it, but it doesn't mean anything. We're not getting divorced, Olivia. This is just paperwork to make him happy." Whitmore slid a pen across the table. "If you just sign here and initial here." Olivia hesitated. Something felt wrong. The speed of it, the pressure, the fact that Harry's father had sent a lawyer before Harry had even bought a ring. But Harry was looking at her with those eyes, the ones that still sometimes held traces of the struggling resident she'd fallen in love with, the one who'd needed her, who'd promised her that after he made it, everything would be different. She signed. Years later, reading those same papers in a divorce attorney's office, Olivia would understand what she'd done. She'd signed away her claim to everything she'd helped build, had legally declared that her 4 years of sacrifice, her sold possessions, her deferred dreams, had no monetary value, had made herself, on paper, exactly what Harry's family believed she was. A woman with nothing, married to a man with everything, who should be grateful for whatever scraps she received. But on that day, she just signed her name. Olivia Shaw. She'd never taken his last name legally, one small rebellion she'd maintained even as she lost everything else. The wedding was small, a courthouse ceremony on a Tuesday afternoon. Harry's parents didn't attend. His mother, Lauren Ashford, had sent a card, a simple white card with embossed letters that read, "Best wishes on your marriage." No signature, no warmth, just acknowledgement that an event was occurring. Harry's colleague from the hospital served as witness. A nurse Olivia barely knew served as the other. The judge read the standard vows in a voice that suggested he'd done this 17 times already that day. Harry slipped a simple gold band on her finger. It was beautiful, and Olivia tried not to think about how her grandmother's ring, the one she'd pawned to pay for his medical board exam fees, had been worth 10 of this one. "I love you." Harry whispered it as they signed the marriage certificate. "I know this wasn't the wedding you dreamed of. When things settle down, we'll have a real celebration. I promise." Olivia wanted to tell him she didn't care about celebrations. She cared about being seen, being valued, being treated like a partner instead of a convenience. But it was her wedding day, so she smiled and said, "I love you too." They went to dinner at a nice restaurant. Harry spent most of the meal on his phone, texting with colleagues about a surgery scheduled for the next morning. Olivia sat across from her husband, her new husband, and felt more alone than she'd felt in the tiny apartment when he was too busy studying to notice her. Halfway through dessert, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and Olivia saw his expression shift. "I have to take this. It's about tomorrow's case." He was already standing, already walking away. "I'll be right back." He wasn't right back. 20 minutes later, he returned to the table with an apologetic expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. "There's a complication with the patient. I need to go to the hospital to review the new scans. I'm sorry, Olivia. I know it's our wedding night, but this is critical." "Of course." She heard herself say it, heard herself being understanding, being supportive, being everything except honest. Go, save a life. That's more important than cake. Harry kissed her forehead. a gesture that felt more dismissive than affectionate. "You're amazing, so understanding. I'll make this up to you, I promise." He left her sitting there, alone at a table for two, on her wedding night. The waiter brought the check with sympathetic eyes. Olivia paid it with her credit card, the one she'd maxed out twice to cover their expenses while Harry was in fellowship, and went home to their penthouse. She changed out of her simple wedding dress into pajamas, sat on their bed, their marriage bed, alone. Around midnight, she opened her laptop and looked at photography portfolios from artists around the world, people who'd chosen their dreams instead of someone else's, people who'd bet on themselves instead of on another person's potential. Harry came home at 4 a.m. Olivia was still awake. He slipped into bed beside her, smelling like hospital antiseptic and exhaustion. The patient stable, crisis averted. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Thank you for understanding." Olivia lay there in the dark, feeling her husband's breath even out as he fell asleep, and wondered when understanding had become synonymous with accepting less than she deserved. Their first year of marriage, Olivia told herself things would improve. Harry was adjusting to his new position. The hours were demanding. The pressure was intense. Once he settled in, once he felt secure, he'd have more time, more attention, more appreciation for everything she'd done. The second year, she told herself the same thing, with less conviction. By the third year, she'd stopped telling herself anything. She'd just accepted this was her life. Wife of a successful surgeon, keeper of a beautiful home, invisible woman in a penthouse. She still worked at the community clinic, but Harry had started making comments. "Do you really need to work there? It's not like we need the money. Those people, they're not your responsibility, Olivia. You have responsibilities here." By responsibilities, he meant his calendar, his dry cleaning, his social obligations, his needs, always his. "I like helping people." She tried to explain it once. "It makes me feel useful. You are useful. You keep our home running. That's important too." She'd wanted to scream that keeping his home running wasn't her life's purpose. But she'd learned that expressing her own needs made Harry defensive, made him talk about stress and pressure and how he needed support, not criticism. So she kept working at the clinic and kept quiet about it. The anniversary arrived on a Wednesday, their third anniversary. Olivia spent the afternoon preparing an elaborate meal. She'd researched for hours, found recipes for the seafood dishes Harry's grandmother used to make, the ones he'd mentioned once, years ago, with actual nostalgia in his voice. She'd gone to 3 different stores finding the right ingredients, had spent 4 hours in the kitchen, cooking with the kind of attention and care she used to reserve for photography composition. The table was set with their good china, the set his mother had sent as a grudging wedding gift. Candles flickered between place settings. Wine from the year they'd met sat breathing in a decanter. Olivia had even bought a new dress, simple but elegant, the kind Harry used to notice. She waited. 6 o'clock became 7. 7 became 8. She texted. No response. Called. Voicemail. By 9, the food was cold. By 10, the candles had burned down to stubs. By 11, Olivia had drunk most of the wine herself, sitting alone, at a table set for 2, feeling the last embers of hope extinguish. Harry arrived home after midnight, still on his phone, still in his scrubs. He glanced at the dining room, at the cold food and dead candles, with what might have been guilt. "Sorry. Things ran late at the hospital. There was a complication with a post-op patient. I grabbed something from the cafeteria. It's our anniversary." Olivia's voice came out flat, emotionless. She'd cried all her tears somewhere between hour 2 and hour 3 of waiting. "I know." His tone was defensive now, irritated that she was making an issue of this. "We'll celebrate this weekend, okay? I'll take you somewhere nice. I promise. You're always promising." The words escaped before she could stop them. "You promised we'd celebrate our courthouse wedding properly. That was 3 years ago. You promised when you finished fellowship, things would be different. They're not. You promised I'd get my turn to chase my dreams." "When, Harry? When is my turn?" He'd been loosening his tie, heading toward the bedroom, but her words stopped him. His expression shifted from defensive to something harder. Your turn? Olivia, do you have any idea what my days are like? The pressure I'm under? People's lives depend on me. I'm performing surgeries that most doctors wouldn't attempt. I'm building a reputation, a career. I need support at home, not criticism. I'm not criticizing. I'm asking when I stop being support and start being a person with my own life. You have your own life. You have this penthouse. You have financial security. You work at that clinic because you want to, not because you have to. Most women would be grateful. Most women. The words hung in the air between them. Most women would be grateful. Most women would understand. Most women wouldn't complain. She'd heard variations of this speech before, and each time, it made her feel smaller. I am grateful, Harry. I'm grateful we're not struggling anymore. I'm grateful you're successful. But I'm also lonely. I'm also feeling like I don't matter beyond what I do for you. That's not fair. His voice rose, echoing in their expensive home. I work 80 hours a week to provide this life. You think that's for me? I could live in a studio apartment and be fine. I do this for us, for our future. What future? What are we building together? You make all the decisions. You determine how we spend our time, our money, our lives. I'm just here, existing around your schedule. Harry ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration she knew well. I don't have the energy for this tonight. I just spent 12 hours in surgery. Can we not do this now? When then? When do we talk about us? About our marriage? About me feeling like I'm disappearing? Olivia. He said her name with the kind of exhaustion usually reserved for difficult patients. If you're unhappy, that's on you. I've given you everything. If it's not enough, maybe you need to figure out why you're never satisfied. The words struck like a slap. If it's not enough. As if wanting basic attention from her husband was being greedy. As if expecting reciprocity in a marriage was unreasonable. Harry walked past her, toward their bedroom. I'm exhausted. We'll talk about this when you're being rational. He closed the door. Olivia stood in the dining room, surrounded by the remnants of her wasted effort, and felt something inside her begin to crystallize, not breaking, hardening, transforming into something sharp and cold and self-protective. She cleared the table, threw away the food she'd spent hours preparing, washed the dishes while tears ran silently down her face. And when everything was clean, when all evidence of her failed attempt at connection was erased, she stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were women who were seen by their partners, who were valued, who were cherished, women whose husbands remembered their anniversaries, who came home when they said they would, who asked about dreams and meant it. Olivia Shaw Ashford was not one of those women. And standing there in her expensive prison, she began to wonder, for the first time, if she could be. The 4th year of marriage brought a new development. Harry's parents, having seen his career flourish, decided to restore more than his trust fund. They offered him a position on the board of Ashford Medical Group, their family healthcare conglomerate. It was a part-time role, they said, just attending quarterly meetings, providing medical insight, preparing for eventual leadership transition. Harry accepted without consulting Olivia. This is incredible. He'd announced it over breakfast, a breakfast Olivia had woken up early to prepare. My father is finally recognizing my value, finally seeing that I made the right choice pursuing neurosurgery instead of joining the family practice right away. Olivia had wanted to point out that she'd been the one funding his right choice, that without her sacrifices, he'd never have had the luxury of defying his father. But she'd learned that reminding Harry of her contributions made him resentful. That's wonderful, she'd said instead. I'm proud of you. This means more contact with his parents. Harry had continued, oblivious to her flat tone. My mother wants us to come to dinner this Sunday, family dinner. It's important we make a good impression. We've been married 4 years, Harry. What impression is left to make? He'd given her a look then. Sharp, assessing, the kind of look a surgeon gives before making an incision. Just, wear something nice, okay? Something appropriate. Appropriate had become code for not embarrassing him. Olivia had nodded and said nothing. Sunday dinner at the Ashford estate was exactly as terrible as she'd anticipated. The house was a monument to old money, all antiques and art, and the kind of careful preservation that suggested nothing new or original was welcome. Lauren Ashford greeted them at the door. She air-kissed near Harry's cheeks, warm and maternal. Then she'd turn to Olivia. "Olivia, how domestic you look. Is that dress from a department store?" "It's from a boutique downtown." Olivia had responded evenly, refusing to show how the barb had landed. How quaint. Lauren's smile could freeze oceans. "Come in. Robert is in the study. He's eager to discuss the board position with Harry." Dinner was served in a dining room larger than Olivia's childhood home. Robert Ashford held court at the head of the table, discussing business with Harry while Lauren entertained. Two of her society friends who'd been invited to, as she put it, round out the numbers. "This is Olivia." Lauren had introduced her with the enthusiasm usually reserved for describing furniture. "Harry's wife. She used to be a nurse. Now she keeps house, I suppose. I still work at a community clinic 3 days a week," Olivia had interjected, refusing to be erased completely. How charitable. One of Lauren's friends had said it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It must be so fulfilling, helping the less fortunate. The conversation had moved on, flowing around Olivia like she was a rock in a stream. Invisible, irrelevant. They discussed charity galas, board positions, summer homes in the Hamptons. None of it required her input. None of it acknowledged her presence beyond the physical space she occupied. Halfway through the main course, Lauren had turned her attention back to Olivia. "You know, dear, now that Harry is joining the family business, there will be expectations, social obligations. You'll need to be more polished." "I'm sorry." Olivia had set down her fork, meeting Lauren's eyes. "I'm trying to help you." Lauren's voice had carried that particular tone women use when delivering cruelty disguised as kindness. "Harry is going to be moving in very elevated circles. You'll be expected to attend events, to socialize with influential people. You'll need appropriate clothing, proper deportment, perhaps elocution lessons. I know a wonderful woman who specializes in helping people improve their presentation." The table had gone quiet. Harry's father had continued eating, unbothered. Harry had looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "I appreciate your concern." Olivia had kept her voice level. "But I'm comfortable with who I am. Comfort and appropriateness aren't always the same thing, dear." Lauren had smiled, satisfied she'd made her point. "I'm just thinking of Harry's future. Surely you want what's best for him." And there it was. The trap. Disagree, and she was selfish. Agree, and she accepted that she wasn't good enough. "Of course I want what's best for Harry," Olivia had responded carefully. "I've been wanting what's best for Harry for 8 years now." The comment had hung in the air, its edge unmistakable. Lauren's smile had tightened. After dinner, in the car ride home, Harry had been quiet until they were almost to the penthouse. Then he'd said, "My mother is just trying to help. By insulting me? By suggesting I need to be fixed. She's from a different generation, different social class. She has certain expectations. And what are your expectations, Harry? Do you agree with her? Do you think I'm an embarrassment?" He'd hesitated. That hesitation had told Olivia everything she needed to know. "I think," he'd chosen his words carefully, "I think as my career advances, we'll be in situations where presentation matters. It's not about changing who you are. It's about adapting to different contexts." Adapting, another word for erasing herself. Olivia had turned to look out the window, watching the city lights blur past. "I've been adapting for 8 years, Harry. When do you adapt to me?" He hadn't answered. They'd driven the rest of the way in silence. That night, Olivia had lain awake long after Harry fell asleep. She'd thought about her grandmother's ring, sold to a pawn shop, her camera equipment gathering dust, her photography dreams deferred indefinitely, her sense of self eroded piece by piece until she barely recognized the woman in the mirror. She'd thought about Marcus Chen's question from years ago. When do you get your turn? And for the first time, she'd allowed herself to consider terrifying possibility. What if her turn never came? What if she'd bet everything on a man who would never see her as an equal? What if love without respect was just a beautiful prison? What if she needed to save herself because nobody else was coming? The thought had terrified her, but it had also, in some small way, awakened something she'd thought was dead. Hope, not hope that Harry would change, hope that maybe, somehow, she could. The Medical Foundation Gala happened on a Saturday in October. It was the event of the season for Metropolitan General Hospital, the kind of evening where donations were pledged, reputations were built, and careers were made or broken based on who you knew and how you presented yourself. Harry had been preparing for weeks. This was his debut in the family business context, his first major event as both an attending neurosurgeon and a board member of Ashford Medical Group. Everything needed to be perfect, including Olivia. 2 weeks before the gala, he'd handed her a business card. "This is my assistant stylist. She's expecting your call. She'll help you find something appropriate for the event. I can find my own dress, Harry. Please." His voice had carried an edge of desperation. "Please, Olivia, just this once. Let someone help you. This event is important. We need to make the right impression." She'd wanted to argue, wanted to point out that she'd been making impressions her whole life without a stylist's help. But the exhaustion of constant fighting had worn her down. "Fine, I'll call her." The stylist, a woman named Victoria with severely pulled back hair and sharper opinions, had transformed Olivia's closet into a disaster zone. No, absolutely not. Victoria had held up Olivia's dresses with the kind of disdain usually reserved for biological hazards. "These are all wrong. Wrong cut. Wrong labels. Wrong everything." 3 shopping trips later, Olivia had a gown that cost more than her monthly salary at the clinic, midnight blue silk that clung in ways that made her uncomfortable, shoes that hurt her feet, jewelry on loan from a company that required insurance documentation. The hairstylist had spent 2 hours fighting Olivia's natural texture into submission. The makeup artist had painted over her features until she looked like a stranger. When it was done, Victoria had stepped back with satisfaction. "Now, you look like Dr. Ashford's wife." Olivia had looked in the mirror and hadn't recognized herself. She'd erased everything authentic, everything her, and replaced it with a version that would photograph well beside Harry. On the night of the gala, Harry had examined her like a physician reviewing test results. He'd nodded approval. "Much better. See, Olivia, you can be stunning when you try." The words had landed like a slap. "When you try." As if every other day she wasn't trying. As if existing as herself was somehow insufficient effort. They'd arrived at the gala as a matched set. Harry in his tuxedo, Olivia in her costume. Cameras flashed. He'd placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd, with the kind of ownership that might have looked like affection to observers. Dr. Ashford. Colleagues had approached throughout the evening, shaking Harry's hand, complimenting his recent publications. "And this must be your lovely wife." "Yes, this is Olivia." Harry had introduced her the same way each time. Perfunctory, minimal. As if her presence required no explanation beyond her relationship to him. Olivia had smiled, made small talk, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, played her part flawlessly, and with each passing hour, she'd felt herself disappearing further inside the costume. Lauren had been there, of course, presiding over a table of donors with the authority of a queen holding court. She'd waved Olivia over midway through the evening. "Olivia, darling, come meet some friends. These are the Harrisons, major donors to the hospital foundation. This is my daughter-in-law, Olivia. She's been such a help to Harry, so supportive." The Harrisons had smiled politely. "How wonderful. What do you do, Olivia?" "I'm a nurse. I work at a community clinic." "How noble." Mrs. Harrison's smile had the sharpness of broken glass, giving back to those less fortunate. "That's so important. I don't think of it as noble." Olivia had responded carefully. "I think of it as my career." "Oh." Mrs. Harrison had exchanged a glance with Lauren. "Of course. How lovely that Harry supports your little hobby." "It's not a hobby. It's my profession." Lauren had laughed then, light, dismissive. "She's being modest. Really, Olivia. These days being a doctor's wife is profession enough. All the social obligations, the entertaining, The networking. It's practically a full-time job. The conversation had moved on, leaving Olivia standing there feeling like she'd been patted on the head and told to run along. She'd excused herself, finding refuge near the bar. "You look miserable," a voice beside her. She'd turned to find Marcus Chen, her colleague from the clinic, in a rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit. Marcus, relief had flooded through her. "What are you doing here?" "I won an award. Community healthcare initiative or something. They trotted me out earlier, gave me a plaque. Now I'm counting down until I can leave." He'd studied her face. "You okay? You look like you're barely holding it together." "I'm fine." The lie had come automatically. "Olivia." He'd lowered his voice. "I've known you for 8 years. You're not fine. This," he gestured at her dress, her hair, her entire presentation. "This isn't you. It's who I need to be tonight." Why? For him? Marcus hadn't needed to specify who him was. Does he even see what he's asking you to do? Erasing yourself to make him comfortable? The tears had threatened then. Olivia had blinked them back. "I should get back." To what? To standing beside a man who introduces you like you're an accessory, to smiling for people who think nursing is a hobby, to pretending you're happy. The questions had hit too close. Olivia had turned away. "I can't do this right now." "Okay." Marcus had backed off. "But Olivia, you deserve better than this. You know that, right?" She hadn't answered, hadn't trusted her voice, had just walked away, back into the crowd, back into her role. The night had continued. More handshakes, more introductions, more moments of Harry placing his hand on her back, steering her like property. More conversations where she was discussed in third person while standing right there. Near the end of the evening, Harry had been pulled into a group discussion with hospital administration. Olivia had stood slightly behind him, silent, as they discussed research funding and surgical statistics. "Your wife is very patient," one of the administrators had commented to Harry, as if Olivia couldn't hear. Standing here listening to medical talk that must be completely over her head. Harry had laughed. "She's used to it, very supportive." He hadn't corrected the assumption that she couldn't understand medical terminology. Hadn't mentioned that she was a nurse, that she understood plenty. Had just accepted the compliment about her patience, her supportiveness, her ability to stand quietly while men talked. That had been the moment, standing there in her expensive dress and her painful shoes and her erased identity, listening to her husband accept praise for her submission. That had been the moment Olivia felt something inside her finally, irrevocably, break. Not break into pieces, break free. On the drive home, Harry had been euphoric. That went perfectly. "Did you see how many people wanted to talk about my research? I think I made some real connections tonight. Connections that could lead to major funding. That's wonderful." Olivia's voice had been flat, emotionless. "And you," Harry had reached over, squeezing her hand. "You were perfect tonight. That's the Olivia I need at these events. Poised, polished, making me look good. Can you be her more often?" Olivia had pulled her hand away. "I don't know who that woman was tonight, but she wasn't me. She was the best version of you." Harry hadn't seemed to hear the problem. Professional, appropriate. Why is that bad? Because she was a costume, Harry. I spent 2 hours having my hair tortured into submission. I wore a dress that cost more than I make in a month at the clinic. I stood there listening to people assume I was too stupid to understand medical terminology, and you just let them. You laughed when they called me patient for tolerating conversations over my head. You didn't correct them, didn't defend me, didn't even acknowledge that I'm a healthcare professional too, because tonight wasn't about you being a nurse. It was about you being my wife. There's a difference. The words had hung in the air between them. Heavy, ugly, true. So being your wife means erasing. Being myself. It means adapting to situations. I've told you this before. No, Harry, what you're asking for isn't adaptation. It's erasure, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being introduced like I'm an accessory. Tired of being told I need to try harder to be acceptable. Tired of your mother insulting me and you saying nothing. Tired of being invisible in my own marriage. They'd pulled into the parking garage of their building. Harry had shut off the car, turning to face her with an expression she'd never seen before. Cold, calculating. You're being ungrateful. Again. Do you have any idea what I've given you? This penthouse, financial security, a life most people dream of. And you're complaining because my mother has standards? Because professional events require professional presentation? I gave you my 20s, Harry. I worked 3 jobs so you could complete fellowship. I sold my grandmother's ring so you could eat. I deferred every dream I ever had so you could chase yours. And now you're telling me I'm ungrateful because I want basic respect? I never asked you to do those things. You chose to. And now you're holding them over my head like I owe you something. The words had detonated in the small space of the car. He never asked her to. As if her sacrifices had been unwelcome. As if her love had been a burden he'd never requested. Olivia had unbuckled her seatbelt. Her hands had been shaking. You're right. You never asked. You just accepted, took everything I gave, and never once said thank you. Never once asked what I needed. Never once considered that maybe I was drowning. If you were drowning, that's on you for not speaking up. I am speaking up. Right now. I'm telling you, I'm unhappy. I'm telling you this marriage feels like a prison. I'm telling you, I need things to change. Harry's jaw had tightened. What do you want from me, Olivia? You want me to apologize for being successful? For providing a good life? For having a career that requires certain social obligations? I want you to see me, to value me, to treat me like a partner instead of an employee you're disappointed in. I do value you. No, you don't. You value what I do for you. There's a difference. They'd sat in the garage, the car engine ticking as it cooled, the silence expanding like a living thing between them. Finally, Harry had spoken. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. What? We both need space. Time to calm down. You're being emotional and irrational. Sleep in the guest room. When you're ready to have a rational conversation. When you're ready to apologize. For ruining what should have been a perfect evening. We can talk. Apologize? For what? For having feelings? For asking to be treated with basic dignity? For being ungrateful? For making everything about you? For not understanding what I need? Sleep in the guest room, Olivia, until you're ready to remember your place in this marriage. The words had fallen like a guillotine blade. Your place. Olivia had looked at this man she'd loved for 8 years. This man she'd built from struggling resident to successful surgeon. This man who'd just exiled her to a guest room like she was a child being punished. And she'd said, with a calm that surprised them both, okay. Harry had expected tears, begging, submission. Her quiet agreement had unsettled him. Just like that? Just like that. She'd gotten out of the car, taken the elevator up to their penthouse, and walked straight to the guest room. The room where guests slept, visitors, people who were temporary, not permanent, not home. Olivia had closed the door, finally removed the painful shoes, the constraining dress, the jewelry that wasn't hers. She'd washed off the makeup, released her tortured hair, and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was exhausted, sad, lost, but for the first time in years, she was also awake. Harry thought he'd punished her, thought the guest room was exile, isolation, a lesson in knowing her place. He didn't realize he'd given her the greatest gift: space, distance, separation. The guest room wasn't a prison. It was a chrysalis, and what was about to emerge would destroy everything Harry Ashford thought he controlled. The guest room was beautiful in the way expensive things are when they serve no real purpose, decorated in shades of cream and gray, everything perfectly coordinated, completely soulless. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the slip she'd changed into after removing her gala costume, and felt the weight of 8 years settle onto her shoulders. Her phone sat on the nightstand, 12:37 in the morning. Somewhere in this penthouse, in the bedroom they'd shared for 4 years, Harry was sleeping soundly, unbothered, convinced he'd taught his wife a lesson about her place. Olivia picked up her phone and opened the browser. Her fingers hovered over the search bar for a long moment before she typed 3 words. divorce attorney near me. The results appeared. Dozens of law firms, all promising discreet representation, fair settlements, new beginnings. Olivia scrolled through them, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She clicked on one, Morrison Hayes and Associates, family law specialists. The website showed a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a professional smile. Consultations available, confidential, understanding. Olivia stared at the phone number for 5 full minutes before she closed the browser. She wasn't ready, not yet, but the fact that she'd searched, that she'd even considered it, meant something had fundamentally shifted. She opened a different app, started typing, "What do I want?" The cursor blinked, waiting. Olivia had spent so many years wanting what Harry wanted, needing what Harry needed, that her own desires felt foreign. She typed slowly at first, then faster. "I want to be seen, not as someone's wife, as myself. I want my work to matter. I want to create again. Photography, art, something that's mine. I want respect. I want partnership. I want to stop apologizing for existing. I want to stop being grateful for crumbs. I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning in my own life." The words poured out, years of suppressed needs and buried dreams. When she finally stopped, she had 3 pages of wants, needs, hopes. Not one of them mentioned Harry. That realization hit her like cold water. Every want she had was about reclaiming herself, not about fixing her marriage, not about making Harry see her differently, about becoming whole again, with or without him. Olivia saved the note, titled it Resurrection, because that's what it felt like. The first stirrings of something dead coming back to life. She didn't sleep that night, just sat in the guest room, watching the city lights fade as dawn crept across the sky. And when morning came, she made a decision. She got dressed in her own clothes, simple jeans and a sweater. No costume, no performance. Just Olivia. She walked out of the guest room and found Harry in the kitchen, already dressed, for the hospital, drinking coffee while scrolling through his phone. He looked up when she entered. His expression was expectant, waiting for her apology, for her submission. "Have you learned your lesson?" The words came out casual, almost amused. "Are you ready to have a rational conversation now?" Olivia poured herself coffee. Her hands were steady. "I have learned something. Just not what you think. Meaning, I'm going out today. I'll be back later." Harry's eyebrows rose. "We need to talk about last night. About your behavior. My behavior was honest. Your behavior was cruel. There's nothing to discuss until you're ready to acknowledge that." She walked past him toward the door. Harry stood, following her. "Olivia, wait. Where are you going?" "Out. I have things to handle." "What things?" She turned to face him. For the first time in years, she looked at her husband without fear of disappointing him, without anxiety about his reaction, without the desperate need for his approval. "Things that have nothing to do with you. I'll see you tonight." She left before he could respond, took the elevator down, walked out into October sunshine that felt like benediction. Her first stop was the community clinic where she worked. It was Sunday, her day off, but she knew Marcus would be there. He volunteered every weekend, treating patients who had nowhere else to go. She found him in exam room 3, cleaning a wound on a teenage boy's arm. "Hold still. Almost done." Marcus glanced up, saw Olivia in the doorway, and his expression shifted to concern. "Hey, what are you doing here? You okay? Can we talk after you're finished?" 20 minutes later, they sat in the small break room. Marcus made tea, set it in front of her. Waited. "I need advice." Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "From someone who isn't going to tell me what I want to hear." "Okay. Last night, after the gala, Harry told me to sleep in the guest room. Said I needed to learn my place, that I was being ungrateful and irrational." Marcus's jaw tightened. And I did. I slept in the guest room, but not because he told me to, because I needed space to think, and I realized something." "What?" "I'm not happy. Haven't been for years. maybe ever in this marriage. I've been so busy trying to be enough for him that I forgot I was already enough. Just not for him. Marcus sipped his tea. What are you going to do? I don't know. I looked up divorce attorneys last night, but I'm scared. The prenup I signed, it's brutal. I'd walk away with almost nothing. And I don't even know who I am anymore, outside of being Harry's wife. You're Olivia Shaw. Marcus's voice was firm. You're a brilliant nurse, a kind human being, someone who sees people, really sees them. You were all of that before Harry, and you'll be all of that after. After. The word felt both terrifying and liberating. I worked 3 jobs to put him through fellowship, Marcus. I gave him everything. And now, I'd be starting over with nothing. Not nothing. You have your skills, your intelligence, your work ethic. And Olivia, you have something more valuable than money. What? You have the knowledge that you can survive anything. You've already proven that. You survived poverty, survived working 80 hours a week, survived being emotionally starved in a penthouse. You're the strongest person I know. You just forgot that about yourself. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. What if I can't do it? What if I leave and I fail? What if you stay and disappear completely? Marcus leaned forward. I've watched you fade for 8 years, watched you make yourself smaller and smaller. Last night at the gala, I barely recognized you, not because of the dress or the hair, because the light was gone from your eyes. You looked like you were haunting your own life. The words hit hard because they were true. You don't have to decide everything today. Marcus continued. But Olivia, please, talk to someone, a therapist, a lawyer, anyone who can help you see clearly. Because what Harry is doing to you, making you feel crazy for having needs, exiling you for expressing feelings, that's not love. That's control. After she left the clinic, Olivia drove aimlessly. She found herself in neighborhoods she'd lived in before Harry, before the penthouse and the luxury and the slow erosion of self. She passed the tiny apartment where they'd started. Someone else's laundry hung on the balcony now, someone else's life unfolding in the space where hers had narrowed. She pulled over near a park and opened her phone, stared at Morrison Hayes' number. Her finger hovered over the call button. Do it. The voice in her head sounded like her younger self, the woman who'd had dreams, who'd believed she could be an artist, who'd fallen in love with a struggling resident and thought she was building a partnership. Do it before you talk yourself out of it. Olivia pressed call. The phone rang twice before a professional voice answered. Morrison Hayes and Associates, how may I help you? Olivia's voice shook. I need to speak with someone about divorce. The appointment was set for Monday morning. Olivia spent the rest of Sunday in a strange state of calm. She returned to the penthouse late afternoon. Harry was in his study, reviewing patient files. Where were you? He didn't look up from his computer. Like I said, out where? Does it matter? He finally looked at her then. Actually studied her. And something in her expression must have registered, because his irritation shifted to unease. Are you still upset about last night? Upset doesn't begin to cover it, Harry. He sighed. The long-suffering sigh of a man dealing with an irrational woman. I was trying to give us space. You were being emotional. I thought some time apart would help you calm down. I am calm. Calmer than I've been in years, actually. Good. So we can move past this? No, we can't. Because the problem isn't that I was emotional. The problem is that you think my emotions are a problem. That asking for basic respect is irrational. That wanting to be seen as a whole person is ungrateful. Olivia, I don't have time for another fight. I have a complex surgery tomorrow morning. I'm not fighting. I'm stating facts. You told me to sleep in the guest room until I learned my place. I slept there, but not because I learned my place, because I realized I don't have a place in this marriage. I have a function, and I'm tired of functioning for you. What does that mean? It means things need to change, fundamentally, or they need to end. Harry stood abruptly. End? You're threatening divorce now because I asked you to sleep in another room for one night. I'm not threatening anything. I'm telling you the truth. This marriage is killing who I am, and I'm not willing to die anymore. You're being dramatic. Am I? When's the last time you asked about my dreams, Harry? My goals? My life beyond managing yours? He stared at her, silent. Exactly. You can't even remember, because you don't think about it. You think about what you need, what I can do for you, how I can make your life easier. But you never, not once, think about who I am or what I want. I think about us, about our future. No. You think about your future, and whether I fit into it. That's not the same thing. Harry ran his hands through his hair, frustrated, cornered. What do you want from me? I want you to care that I'm unhappy. I want you to be bothered that your wife is miserable. I want you to consider that maybe, just maybe, you've been treating me terribly, and I deserve better. I give you everything. You give me things, money, a penthouse, status, but you don't give me respect. You don't give me partnership. You don't give me love, real love, the kind that sees someone and values them for who they are, not what they do for you. That's not fair. I love you. Do you? Or do you love having someone who manages your life? Someone who makes you look good? Someone who asks for nothing and gives everything? The question hung between them. Heavy, unanswerable. I'm sleeping in the guest room again tonight. Olivia said it calmly. Not because you told me to, because I want to, because I need space to figure out what I'm going to do about this marriage. She walked past him. This time, he didn't follow. Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after sleepless nights. Olivia dressed in her most professional clothes, left the penthouse before Harry woke, drove to an office building downtown where Morrison, Hayes and Associates occupied the 7th floor. The waiting room was designed to be soothing. Soft colors, quiet music, tissues strategically placed. How many women had sat in these chairs before her, Olivia wondered. How many had come here carrying the weight of failed marriages and uncertain futures? Miss Shaw? A woman appeared in the doorway, silver hair pulled back, kind eyes behind stylish glasses. I'm Morrison Hayes. Please come in. The office was professional but warm. Diplomas on the wall. Family photos on the desk. Morrison gestured to a comfortable chair across from hers. Tell me why you're here. And Olivia did. Everything poured out. 8 years of sacrifice. The prenup signed without proper representation. Harry's transformation from grateful partner to entitled husband. His mother's cruelty. The guest room exile. The slow, systematic erasure of her identity. Morrison listened, took notes, asked clarifying questions. When Olivia finally stopped, throat raw from talking, Morrison set down her pen. First, I want you to know that what you're describing is a pattern of emotional abuse. Isolation, degradation, financial control through the prenup, making you doubt your own reality. These are classic tactics. The word abuse landed hard. Olivia had thought of her marriage as difficult. Unhappy, not abusive. I know that's hard to hear. Morrison's voice was gentle. But it's important you understand what's been happening, because it will help you see clearly as we move forward. The prenup. Olivia's voice was small. I signed away everything. Let me see it. Olivia pulled out her phone. She'd photographed the document months ago, some instinct telling her she might need it. Morrison read through it, her expression growing more severe with each page. This is unconscionable. You signed this before the marriage? Yes. His father's lawyer presented it. Harry said it was just a formality. Did you have your own attorney review it? No. Harry said we couldn't afford to pay for 2 lawyers, that his father was covering it as a wedding gift, that I should just trust him. Morrison set down the phone. This agreement is potentially voidable. You signed under duress, without independent counsel, and circumstances have changed dramatically. When you signed this, what was your financial situation? I was working 3 jobs, making maybe $30,000 a year total. We were living in a tiny apartment, barely scraping by. And Harry's financial situation? He was a fellow, making maybe 50,000, but he had the trust fund he couldn't access yet, his family's wealth in the background, and now he's chief of neurosurgery at Metropolitan General, makes over 400,000 a year. Plus, he's on the board of his family's company. That's probably another 100,000 in board fees. And the trust fund was restored. That's, I don't even know how much, millions. So you entered this marriage as near equals in poverty. You supported him through his training, and now he has substantial wealth while you have nothing. Morrison smiled. That's not equitable. Courts don't like that. Hope flickered in Olivia's chest. So I wouldn't leave with nothing? No. We'd challenge the prenup, argue for spousal support based on your contributions to his career. But Olivia, I need to be honest with you. This will be a fight. Harry's family has resources. They'll hire expensive lawyers. It could get ugly. Uglier than being told to sleep in a guest room until I learn my place. Morrison's expression hardened. Point taken. There's something else you should know. In cases like this, where one spouse has significant family wealth, we often discover assets that weren't disclosed. The prenup protected his trust fund and inheritance. But what about assets you're entitled to? Money he earned during the marriage, using your support? I never thought about it. Start thinking about it. Morrison leaned forward. Did your father leave you anything? Inheritance? Trust? Olivia froze. Yes, a trust. From life insurance. He died when I was in nursing school. The lawyer said it was around 150,000. But Harry and we decided not to touch it, to save it for emergencies. Where is that money now? I don't know. I haven't thought about it in years. You need to find out. That money is yours. Separate property. If it's been sitting untouched, it's likely grown. That could be your escape fund, Olivia. Your resources to start over. After the appointment, Olivia sat in her car with Morrison's words echoing. Her father's trust. She'd completely forgotten about it. Harry had convinced her they didn't need it, that touching it would be disrespectful to her father's memory unless it was a true emergency. Rebuilding your life is an emergency. Morrison had said, find that money. Olivia called the bank her father had used. Spent 20 minutes being transferred before she reached someone who could access old accounts. I'm trying to locate a trust fund under my name, Olivia Shaw, set up about 9 years ago. Keyboard clicking. Yes, I have it here. The Olivia Shaw Trust. You're the sole beneficiary. How much is in it? More clicking. As of this morning, $2.3 million. Olivia nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry. Did you say million? Yes, ma'am. The initial deposit of $147,000 has been invested conservatively over the past 9 years. With compound interest and market growth, it's now valued at $2.3 million. You've never withdrawn anything. It's just been growing. Olivia sat in stunned silence. $2.3 million. She'd been living like Harry's dependent, signing prenups that left her with nothing, believing she had no options. And the entire time, she'd had over $2 million sitting in an account she'd forgotten existed. Would you like to make any changes to the account? The bank representative asked. Yes. Olivia's voice was stronger now. I'd like full access. I'd like statements sent to a new email address. And I'd like to speak with someone about investment options. Absolutely. I'll transfer you to our wealth management department. Wealth management. Olivia almost laughed. She'd been scrubbing floors and working triple shifts while wealth sat in her name, untouched. By the time she finished at the bank, she had a new financial advisor, a new email account Harry didn't know about, and a wire transfer being set up to move funds into a new account. Her account, her escape fund, her freedom. But Olivia didn't go home. Not yet. She had one more stop to make. Her Uncle James, her father's younger brother, a venture capitalist who'd built a small fortune in tech investments. She hadn't spoken to him in almost 6 years, not since her wedding, when Harry had made comments about James being too flashy, too nouveau riche, not the kind of family connections that helped a medical career. Olivia had let that relationship fade, like she'd let everything fade that Harry didn't approve of. She called from the parking lot, held her breath through 3 rings. "Olivia?" James's voice was cautious, surprised. "Is everything okay?" "No. Actually, everything is terrible. Can I see you?" She met him at a coffee shop in a neighborhood Harry never visited. James looked older than she remembered, more gray in his hair, but his smile was the same, warm, genuine. He hugged her tight. "I've missed you, kid. I've missed you too. I'm sorry that we lost touch. Let me guess." Harry. It wasn't a question. They sat. Olivia ordered coffee she didn't drink, and then she told him everything, not the sanitized version. The truth. The sacrifices, the erosion, the guest room, the decision to leave. James listened. When she finished, his expression was a mixture of anger and sadness. "I knew," he said quietly. "I knew something was wrong. At your wedding, the way he talked to you, the way his mother looked at you. I wanted to say something. Should have said something. It wouldn't have mattered. I wasn't ready to hear it. Are you ready now?" "Yes." James leaned back. "What do you need?" "I need help. I have money now, from Dad's trust, but I don't know what to do with it. Morrison, my attorney, she said something about building my own resources, making myself independent, but I don't know how. How much are we talking about?" 2.3 million. James's eyebrows rose. "Okay, that's real money. What do you want to do with it?" Olivia had been thinking about this since leaving the bank. "I want to be more than Harry's ex-wife. I want to build something, own something, be someone. But I don't know what. Tell me about Harry's career, his family's business. He's chief of surgery at Metropolitan General, and he's on the board of Ashford Medical Group. His family's healthcare company. They own urgent care centers, outpatient facilities, a couple of small hospitals. It's worth maybe 200 million. His parents own 60%. Harry owns 40. James pulled out his phone, started typing. "And are they publicly traded?" "No, private family company." "Why?" He turned his phone around. "Because according to this article from last month, Ashford Medical Group is planning an IPO. Going public, offering shares to investors, and the tentative date is 6 months from now." Olivia stared at the screen. She'd known about the IPO vaguely. Harry had mentioned it, but she hadn't paid attention, hadn't thought it concerned her. James was smiling now, the kind of smile that meant he saw an opportunity. "Olivia, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "I don't know what you're thinking. I'm thinking about a very smart woman who has $2.3 million to invest, and a company going public that she knows intimately. A company run by people who underestimated her. A company that, if she played her cards right, she could own a significant piece of." Olivia's heart started pounding. "You're talking about buying shares. I'm talking about buying a lot of shares, and I know other investors, people who've had issues with how Ashford Medical Group operates, people who'd love to see some shakeup in leadership. If we coordinated, if we pooled resources, we could buy enough shares to have real power, to have control." The word hung in the air. Control. Not over Harry, over her own life, over her own future, and maybe, just maybe, over the empire she'd helped build. Is that even legal? It's not just legal, it's capitalism, baby. James was fully energized now. "Look, Ashford Medical Group going public means they're selling ownership. Anyone with money can buy in. If you buy enough shares, you get voting rights, board seats, power. And here's the beautiful part. They won't see it coming. You'll use shell companies, different investment vehicles. By the time they realize what's happening, you'll already own the company. If you're looking for revenge, drop a comment right now, Team Olivia or Team Harry. And if you're Team Olivia, tell me what you would do in her position. Hit that subscribe button because this revenge is just getting started. I'm Mr. Hearthline, and you're about to witness the greatest comeback you've ever seen." Olivia spent the next 2 months living a double life. By day, she was the dutiful wife. Still sleeping in the guest room, Harry had stopped asking her to apologize, had stopped asking her to come back to their bedroom. They existed in a cold truce, polite strangers sharing a penthouse, By night, she was someone else entirely. She met with James, with his financial advisors, with corporate lawyers who specialized in hostile takeovers and shareholder activism. She learned terms like equity stake and proxy votes and beneficial ownership. She discovered that Harry's family company had vulnerabilities. Ashford Medical Group had been accused of unethical billing practices at their urgent care centers, had settled lawsuits over patient care, had a reputation for putting profit over people. There were doctors who'd left, patients who'd complained, investors who'd been burned by Robert Ashford's aggressive expansion strategies. James introduced her to these people, oncologists who'd quit rather than follow AMG's treatment protocols that prioritized insurance reimbursement over patient outcomes, former employees who'd been forced out for whistleblowing, patients' families who'd paid thousands for unnecessary procedures. Each conversation fueled Olivia's resolve. Ashford Medical Group wasn't just Harry's family business. It was a system that hurt people, and she was going to fix it. The IPO prospectus was filed in December. Olivia read every page. The company was offering 40% of its shares to the public. The Ashford family would retain 60%. At the projected stock price, the offering would raise about $80 million. James ran the numbers. With your $2.3 million, plus the investors I'm bringing in, we can buy approximately 12% of the public offering. That gives us significant stake, but not control. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled up financial documents. After the IPO, if the stock performs well, we can buy more on the open market. And I have friends, institutional investors, who are very interested in taking a position. They're tired of the Ashford family's cowboy tactics. How much would we need for control? 51%, but we don't need that immediately. We just need enough to force board changes, to demand accountability, to make them listen. How much is enough? 25% gives us serious power. 30% makes us the largest shareholder block. At 30%, we control the board. Can we get to 30? If the stock price is right, and we move fast, yes. I have commitments for about $15 million in investment. Combined with your stake, we're looking at owning somewhere between 28 and 32% of Ashford Medical Group. Olivia stared at the numbers. Her $2 million would be the seed money, the catalyst. But James's network would provide the real firepower. When do we move? IPO is scheduled for February 15th. We buy big on opening day. Then we wait. Watch the price. If it climbs, we hold. If it drops, we buy more. Within 60 days, we'll have our position. And then you file for divorce. Then you call a shareholders meeting. Then you introduce yourself properly. Olivia felt a smile spread across her face. Introduce myself as what? As the woman who owns their company. Christmas was awkward. Harry wanted to go to his parents' estate. Olivia declined. I'm working at the clinic. We're doing a holiday health fair for low-income families. On Christmas? Someone has to help them, Harry. He'd looked at her with something like disgust. You're choosing strangers over family. Your family has never treated me like family. So yes, I'm choosing people who actually appreciate me. She'd worked the health fair, spent Christmas Day checking blood pressures, distributing donated coats, playing Santa's helper for children whose parents couldn't afford doctor visits. Marcus had been there too. They'd worked side by side like the old days. You seem different, he'd commented during a break. Lighter, somehow. I have a plan. What kind of plan? The kind I can't talk about yet. But Marcus, you remember asking me when I get my turn? He'd nodded. I'm taking it. Soon, everything's about to change. The new year came. Olivia filed for divorce on January 15th. 1 month before the IPO, Harry was served with papers at the hospital. He'd called her immediately, 17 times. She'd ignored every call. Finally, he'd come home. Furious. What the hell is this? Olivia had been sitting in the living room, calm, prepared. It's a petition for divorce. I thought it was self-explanatory. You filed for divorce without even talking to me? I've been talking to you for months, Harry. You just haven't been listening. I told you things needed to change. They didn't, so I'm changing them. This is insane. You're throwing away our marriage over, what, sleeping in a guest room? I'm ending our marriage because you don't love me. You love what I do for you, and I'm done doing it. I do love you. No, you love being loved. You love having someone who manages your life and makes you look good and asks for nothing. But that's not love, Harry. That's convenience. We can fix this. Go to counseling. Work on things. There's nothing to work on. The marriage is over. I'm done. The prenup, Olivia. You signed a prenup. You're going to walk away with nothing. Maybe, or maybe not. My lawyer seems to think it's challengeable. Unconscionable, she called it. Harry's expression had shifted to something uglier. You're really going to do this? After everything I've given you? After everything you've given me? Olivia had stood. Let's talk about what I gave you. 3 jobs, 80-hour weeks. My grandmother's ring, my savings. 20s, my dreams, my identity. I gave you everything, Harry, and you gave me a penthouse in contempt. So yes, I'm really going to do this. The Ashford Medical Group IPO launched on February 15th on a cold Tuesday morning. The stock opened at $18 per share. By noon, it had climbed to 22. By market close, 25. James called Olivia at 4 p.m. We did it. We bought in at opening. 12.4% of available shares. Total investment, $2.1 million from you, $13.8 million from the consortium. We're in. What happens now? Now we watch and buy more if opportunities arise. The opportunities arose. 3 weeks after the IPO, a negative article came out about Ashford Medical Group's billing practices. Old accusations resurfaced. The stock dipped to $19. James called. We're buying. Everyone's buying. This is the gift. By the end of March, they'd accumulated another 8%. Total holdings now at 20.4%. In April, one of the institutional investors James knew, a healthcare-focused fund, took a 10% position. They'd been briefed on the plan. They were allies. By May, the coalition controlled 30.4% of Ashford Medical Group, more than Robert and Lauren Ashford's 30%, more than Harry's 20%. They owned the company. They just hadn't announced it yet. Olivia, James had said during their strategy meeting, it's time. Time for what? Time to stop hiding. Time to call a board meeting. Time to introduce yourself. What if they fight? Let them fight. We have the votes. We have the power. And you have the moral authority. You built this company's reputation through the work you did supporting Harry. Now you're going to rebuild it the right way. The letter was sent on May 22nd. A formal request for an emergency board meeting of Ashford Medical Group, signed by Shaw Investment Holdings, the shell company Olivia had used to mask her purchases. The board was required to respond within 10 days. They responded in 3. Meeting scheduled for June 1st. 10 a.m. All major shareholders requested to attend. Robert Ashford's assistant had called James. Who is Shaw Investment Holdings? What's this about? You'll find out at the meeting, James had replied pleasantly. On June 1st, Olivia woke up at 5 a.m. She dressed in a suit she'd bought specifically for this day. Navy blue. Professional. Powerful. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Not because she'd changed her appearance, because the woman looking back had something she hadn't seen in years. Certainty. The divorce was still pending. Harry was fighting the prenup challenge. His lawyers were aggressive, expensive, exactly what she'd expected. But it didn't matter anymore, because in a few hours, Harry was going to learn that his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, the woman he'd told to learn her place, owned his family's company. She met James in the parking garage of the building where Ashford Medical Group had its headquarters. He smiled when he saw her. Ready to own a healthcare empire? Ready to fix one. They rode the elevator up together, walked into the conference room where the board of directors was assembled. Robert Ashford at the head of the table, Lauren beside him, Harry to his father's right, 3 other board members, all older men, all wearing expressions of confusion. And at the far end of the table, 1 empty chair. Robert stood when they entered. His expression was cold. I don't know who you people are, but this is a closed board meeting. If you have business with Ashford Medical Group, schedule it through proper channels. We are proper channels." James gestured to Olivia. "May I introduce Olivia Shaw, majority shareholder of Shaw Investment Holdings, which as of this morning controls 30.4% of this company's outstanding shares." The room went silent. Harry's face had gone pale. Lauren's mouth opened slightly. Robert's expression cycled through confusion, understanding, and rage in rapid succession. "That's impossible." Robert's voice was tight. "We retained 60%. You retained 60% of total shares, but you only own 30% individually. Harry owns 20. The remaining 10% was held by early investors who sold during the IPO." Olivia walked to the empty chair at the head of the table, the one directly across from Robert. "And we bought those shares, plus 20.4% of the IPO offering, which means our coalition is now the largest shareholder block of this company. This is absurd." Lauren found her voice. "You can't just walk in here and claim ownership. I'm not claiming anything." Olivia sat down, opened her briefcase, pulled out documents. "I'm stating facts. Here's the documentation, share certificates, proxy votes from our investor partners. As the largest shareholder, I'm exercising my right to call this meeting and propose changes to the board structure." "What changes?" Robert's voice was dangerous now. "I'm proposing that the board be expanded from 6 members to 9, that 3 new directors be appointed immediately, and that those directors represent our investment coalition's interests. You can't do that without a vote." "I know, so let's vote. All in favor?" James raised his hand. The representatives from the 2 institutional investors who joined the coalition raised their hands. Olivia raised hers. "That's only 4 votes. Robert looked around the table. "The rest of us, the 6 current board members, we vote no. You lose." Olivia smiled. "Actually, under the corporate bylaws, major shareholders can call for a special election, which requires only 30% ownership, which we have. So the vote will go to all shareholders, and I'm quite confident how that will turn out. This is a hostile takeover." Lauren's voice shook with rage. "No, this is capitalism. You took this company public, sold ownership to investors. We invested. Now we own the majority stake. That's how this works." Harry finally spoke. His voice was quiet. "Olivia, what are you doing?" She turned to look at her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, the man who'd told her to learn her place. "I'm taking my place, Harry, as the new chair of this board, as the person with the power to reshape this company into what it should be, as someone who refuses to be invisible anymore. You planned this, the whole time. The divorce, everything. I planned to survive, to build something that was mine, to stop letting you and your family treat me like I was worthless. If that destroyed your sense of control, well, maybe you shouldn't have underestimated me." Robert stood. "This isn't over. We'll fight this. We have lawyers." "So do I. Better ones." Olivia stood as well. "And while you're fighting, I'll be implementing changes, starting with an independent audit of all billing practices, a review of patient care protocols, and a complete overhaul of how this company values people over profit. You'll destroy everything we've built. No, I'll save everything you've corrupted. There's a difference." She gathered her documents. "The meeting is adjourned. You'll receive formal notice of the board expansion vote within 48 hours. I suggest you prepare." Olivia walked out of that boardroom with James beside her. Behind her, she heard Lauren's voice rising, heard Harry's shocked silence, heard Robert making threats that meant nothing because they had no power anymore. In the elevator, James started laughing. "Did you see their faces? That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." Olivia felt something bubbling up in her chest. Not quite laughter, not quite tears, something that felt like years of suppressed power finally breaking free. They exited the building into June sunshine. Olivia stood on the sidewalk, looked up at the glass tower that housed Ashford Medical Group, and let herself smile. She owned this. Not just the building, not just the shares. The power, the control, the future, and it felt extraordinary. The media coverage started within hours. Healthcare company sees shakeup as new investors take control. The articles focused on the investors, on the corporate maneuvering. None of them identified Olivia by name yet. She was buried in corporate filings as O. Shaw, represented by Shaw Investment Holdings. But the medical community was smaller. People talked. By evening, whispers were circulating at Metropolitan General. Did you hear? Harry Ashford's wife just bought his family's company. The divorce, the timing, it was all planned. Harry didn't come home that night. Olivia didn't expect him to. She sat in the penthouse, in the guest room that had been her catalyst, and thought about how far she'd come. Her phone rang. Morrison Hayes. I saw the news. Morrison's voice carried undisguised admiration. I have to say, this is the most spectacular divorce strategy I've ever witnessed. His lawyers called an hour ago. They want to settle. On what terms? They're dropping their defense of the prenup, offering you $2 million in the settlement. Olivia laughed. Tell them no. No. Morrison sounded surprised. I don't want his money. I want the divorce finalized quickly and quietly. I'll waive spousal support. I'll take nothing from our marital assets. In exchange, the divorce is final in 30 days. No contests. No delays. Why would you do that? Because I don't need his money anymore. I have my own. And dragging this out serves no purpose except giving him time to be vindictive. I want him out of my life. Completely. Permanently. Are you sure? You're entitled to more. I'm sure. Draw up the papers. Olivia felt certainty settle into her bones. I'm done letting Harry Ashford define any part of my life, including how I leave him. The settlement was signed within a week. Harry agreed to everything. Quick divorce. No spousal support. A clean break. His lawyers probably advised him it was the best he could hope for, given how spectacularly Olivia had outmaneuvered him. The divorce was final on June 30th, 5 months after she'd filed, 8 years after she'd married him. Olivia Shaw was officially free. The first board meeting with the new structure happened in July. Olivia had been appointed chair. James held a director position. 2 other seats went to the institutional investors. The remaining positions stayed with the Ashfords, but they were outvoted on every major decision. Good morning. Olivia opened the meeting with the same calm she'd felt in the takeover. Today, we're implementing new policies. First, all billing practices will be audited by an independent firm. Second, patient care protocols will be reviewed by a medical ethics board. Third, we're establishing a community health initiative to provide free care at underserved locations. This will cost millions. Robert's voice was bitter. You're going to bankrupt us. No. I'm going to make us ethical. There's a difference. And according to the projections our new CFO prepared, the audit will actually save U.S. money long-term by eliminating the lawsuits your practices have been generating. You have no experience running a healthcare company. You're right, but I have 8 years of experience supporting someone's medical career. I have years of working in community health, and I have a commitment to doing this right. That's more experience than you had when you inherited this company from your father. The vote passed, 4-3. Every reform Olivia proposed, every change, every shift toward putting patients before profit. Over the following months, Ashford Medical Group transformed. The company was renamed Shaw Healthcare Collective. The rebranding emphasized community care, ethical practices, transparent billing. Several executives who'd been part of the old regime resigned. Good. Olivia replaced them with doctors and administrators who shared her vision. The urgent care centers stopped pushing unnecessary tests. The billing department stopped exploiting insurance loopholes. Patient satisfaction scores rose, and surprisingly, so did profits. Turned out that ethical healthcare was also good business. Harry watched all of this from a distance. He was still chief of surgery at Metropolitan General, still brilliant in the operating room, but his reputation had taken a hit. People whispered, the man whose wife bought his family's company, the surgeon who didn't see his own wife's genius until she owned his world. Olivia ran into him one time, 6 months after the divorce. She was at Metropolitan General meeting with their purchasing department about a supply contract. He was walking out of surgery. They stopped, facing each other in a hallway where once he'd been king and she'd been invisible. "Olivia," his voice was tentative. "You look well." "Thank you. You too. I heard about the changes at Shaw Healthcare, the community clinics. It's good work. I'm trying. I never—" Harry stopped, started again. "I never saw you, really saw you, who you were, what you were capable of. I'm sorry." Olivia looked at this man who'd once been her entire world and felt nothing, not anger, not vindication, just the gentle sadness of mourning something that had died long ago. "I'm sorry too, Harry. Sorry you needed to lose everything before you learned to value anything. But that's not my problem anymore." She walked past him, didn't look back, had nothing more to say, because Harry Ashford was her past, and Olivia Shaw had a future to build. A year after the takeover, Shaw Healthcare Collective was featured in medical journals as a model for ethical healthcare delivery. Olivia was invited to speak at conferences, to testify before state health committees about healthcare reform. She hired Marcus Chen as chief medical officer. He'd quit his position to join her, bringing his expertise in community health and his absolute commitment to patient care. "We're changing the whole system," he'd said during his first board meeting. "One clinic at a time." They expanded, opened 12 new locations in underserved areas, established scholarships for nursing students from low-income backgrounds, created partnerships with medical schools to train doctors in community health, and somewhere in the middle of building an empire and changing an industry, Olivia remembered she'd once wanted to be a photographer. She started carrying a camera again, taking pictures of the clinics, the patients, the staff, moments of healing and hope. She mounted an exhibition at a local gallery. Healthcare workers, unseen. Portraits of nurses and aides and doctors who kept the system running. The opening was crowded. Press, colleagues, patients whose lives had been changed by Shaw Healthcare. And in the back, near a photo of a nurse checking a child's temperature, stood a man Olivia hadn't noticed before. Tall, salt and pepper hair, looking at her photos with the intensity of someone who understood art. He caught her eye, smiled, walked over. "These are extraordinary." His voice was warm. "You capture dignity in a way most photographers miss." "Thank you. I'm trying to show the people who are usually invisible. You're succeeding." He extended his hand. "Ethan Clark. I curate for the Modern Gallery downtown. I'd love to talk to you about a larger show. Olivia Shaw. And I'd love that." They talked for an hour about photography, about healthcare, about the intersection of art and activism. When the crowd thinned, Ethan asked if she'd like to continue the conversation over coffee. She said yes. 6 months later, they were dating. A year later, engaged. And 2 years after the divorce, Olivia Shaw married Ethan Clark in a small ceremony surrounded by people who loved her for exactly who she was. Marcus walked her down the aisle. James gave a toast about the woman who'd bet on herself and won. Patients from the clinic sent cards and flowers. Harry wasn't invited, wasn't thought of, was barely a memory. During her vows, Olivia looked at Ethan and said the words she meant. "I promise to be my whole self with you, to never shrink, to build something beautiful together where both of us grow, to love you while loving myself, to be your partner in every sense of the word." And Ethan, looking at her like she was the most extraordinary thing he'd ever seen, promised the same. They honeymooned in Italy. Olivia photographed everything. Light on ancient buildings. Market vendors, children playing in fountains. She was creating again, living again, being someone beyond a role someone else had assigned. When they returned, she had a gallery show at the Modern. The exhibition was called Becoming. Self-portraits documenting her journey from erasure to empowerment. Photos from the guest room, from the boardroom, from the new life she'd built. Critics called it powerful, honest, necessary. But the response Olivia treasured most came from a letter, handwritten, from a woman she'd never met. "Dear Miss Shaw, I saw your exhibition today, the self-portrait in the guest room. I'm writing this from my own guest room. My husband put me here 3 days ago for embarrassing him at a dinner party. I've been sitting here thinking I deserved it, that I was the problem. But your photo, the way you captured that moment of awakening, it made me realize something. The guest room isn't punishment, it's perspective. I'm leaving tomorrow. Thank you for showing me it's possible. Thank you for becoming. Olivia read that letter 3 times, then framed it, hung it in her office at Shaw Healthcare Collective. Because that was the point. Not the revenge, not the corporate takeover, not even the success. The point was showing other women trapped in guest rooms that they could leave, that they could rebuild, that they could become. 5 years after the divorce, Olivia stood in front of Congress. She'd been invited to testify about healthcare reform, about how putting patients before profit wasn't just ethical, it was sustainable. She wore a navy suit, professional, powerful, completely herself. My name is Olivia Shaw. I'm the founder and chair of Shaw Healthcare Collective. But before I was any of those things, I was a nurse, working 3 jobs to make ends meet. I know what it's like to choose between rent and medical care, to avoid getting treatment because the bills are terrifying, to work in a system that prioritizes profit over healing. She detailed Shaw Healthcare's model, the free clinics, the transparent billing, the patient outcomes that exceeded industry standards while costs stayed lower. People told me ethical healthcare couldn't be profitable. They were wrong. People told me I couldn't change a corrupt system. They were wrong. People told me I should be grateful for what I was given and stop asking for more. They were very wrong. Laughter rippled through the room. What I've learned is that the people who tell you to know your place are usually people who benefit from you staying small. Don't stay small. Don't accept less than you deserve. Don't let anyone convince you that asking for dignity is asking too much. After the testimony, reporters swarmed. Questions about Shaw Healthcare, about her journey, about how a nurse became a healthcare CEO. One reporter asked, "Do you have any regrets?" Olivia considered the question. Only one. I regret not leaving sooner. I regret the years I spent making myself smaller. But I don't regret the journey, because it taught me that you're never too deep in the wrong life to build the right one. The interview went viral. The quote appeared on social media, on inspiration pages, in comments sections where women shared their own guest room stories. Olivia became more than a healthcare executive. She became a symbol, proof that underestimated women could rise, that patience wasn't weakness, that strategic silence could become deafening power. Shaw Healthcare continued growing. 20 locations, then 30, awards for patient care, recognition for ethical practices, job offers for Olivia to lead national organizations. She declined them all. Shaw Healthcare was her focus, her purpose, her way of making sure that people who couldn't afford care still received it. And somewhere in all of this, in building an empire and changing an industry and becoming herself, Olivia realized something profound. Harry hadn't been her villain. He'd been her teacher. He'd shown her exactly what she didn't want, what she wouldn't tolerate, what she was worth. The guest room hadn't been her prison. It had been her awakening. And the woman who'd once slept there, scared and small, and convinced she deserved nothing, that woman was gone. In her place stood Olivia Shaw, CEO, photographer, wife, revolutionary, whole, powerful, free. Family, if you've made it to the end of Olivia's story, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about resurrection, about a woman who was told to know her place and decided her place was at the head of the table. But here's what I really need you to hear. Olivia's story started the moment she said okay to the guest room, not with anger, not with drama, with quiet acceptance that gave her space to think clearly. Sometimes the punishment people give us is actually the gift we need. If you're in your own guest room right now, literal or metaphorical, I want you to know something. You have more power than you realize, more resources than you've tapped, more strength than you've needed yet. Olivia didn't need Harry to become successful. She needed to believe in herself. The company takeover was satisfying, yes, But her real victory was internal. She reclaimed her identity. She remembered her worth. She refused to stay small. Now I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now. Not for me. For every person sitting in a guest room wondering if there'll ever be enough. Your like helps this story reach them. Subscribe to Mr. Hearthline's Stories. We're building something here, a community of people who believe transformation is possible, who understand that your past doesn't define your future, who know that the person who underestimated you most might be yourself. Drop a comment. Tell me where in the world you're watching from, or just say, "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline." Or tell me, what's your guest room? What's the thing you need to walk away from to become who you're meant to be? And share this. Send it to that friend who's been making herself smaller, to that sister who keeps apologizing for existing, to anyone who needs to remember they're the author of their own story. You want to know what happened to Harry? He's still a surgeon, still brilliant in the operating room. But he learned something Olivia already knew. Technical skill without humanity is just mechanics. He's trying to be better, going to therapy, volunteering, becoming someone who might eventually deserve a second chance, even though he'll never get one from Olivia. Because here's the truth, Olivia forgave him. Not for him, for herself. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means releasing the weight so you can fly higher. Lauren and Robert, they're still minority shareholders. They show up to board meetings, vote against every reform, lose every time, watching the company they corrupted become something beautiful under leadership they tried to destroy. That's poetry. But the best part? Olivia's clinics have treated over 200,000 patients who couldn't afford care anywhere else. Her scholarship program has put 300 nursing students through school. Her ethical healthcare model has been adopted by 12 other companies. She didn't just win, she changed the game. And you can too. You don't need $2 million. You don't need to buy a company. You just need to believe that you deserve better than what you're accepting. You need to stop waiting for permission to become yourself. You need to understand that the people who tell you you're too much are really saying you're too much for them. Find people who can handle your fullness. Olivia once told an interviewer, "The guest room was the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me distance, perspective, space to remember. I was a whole person before I became half of a marriage. If Harry hadn't exiled me, I might have stayed invisible forever." Sometimes our breaking points are actually our breakthrough points. Before you go, I want to leave you with Olivia's words from her congressional testimony. The ones that made headlines, the ones that changed conversations. She said this, "To everyone who's been told they're not enough, I want you to understand something. The person telling you that is usually someone who benefits from you believing it. Your boss who says you should be grateful for poor treatment. Your partner who says you're too sensitive. Your family who says you're being dramatic. They need you small because your growth threatens their control. Grow anyway. Threaten their control. Be too much. Be too sensitive. Be too dramatic. Be so fully, unapologetically yourself that people who can't handle it naturally fall away. And the ones who remain, those are your people. That's your community. That's where you belong." Those words launched a movement. Women started using the hashtag #BeTooMuch, started posting their guest room stories, started choosing themselves. You can too. Check out the next video on your screen. Another story of transformation, another reminder that you're more powerful than you know. Until next time, I'm Mr. Hearthline, reminding you that the best revenge isn't success. It's becoming so genuinely happy that revenge stops being relevant. It's building a life so beautiful that the people who tried to dim your light become footnotes in your story of becoming. Now go out there and own your boardroom, whatever that looks like for you. I'm with you, always. Comment below. Tell me your story. Where are you watching from? What's your guest room? What are you building? This community is growing because of you, because you engage, because you share, because you believe stories like Olivia's matter. They do matter, you matter, and your story, it's just beginning.